Today I'm going to show you as close as I can to a system to learn odd meters faster. Odd meters are going mainstream these days. Today we see people like Tigran Hamasyan and Jesus Molina getting widespread popularity playing songs in 16/17 or whatever. That was a joke. Many of our favorite prog rock bands, whether it's modern groups like Periphery or Animals as Leaders, or groups of the previous generation like Dream Theater or Tool, or even Tigran's reputed favorite band, Meshuggah, are all playing odd meters to huge audiences. But how are you supposed to play them? When you see Tigran playing something like this, or Jesus Molina playing something like this, or Animals as Leaders playing something like this. And maybe we struggle just to play something like this in a simple 5. It can seem like an infinitely high mountain to even approach odd meters. But I've got you. I'm Nate and people call me the 80/20 drummer. And when I was in college, I threw myself into learning stuff like 5, 7, and 9. In this past month, I've been working anew on something in 11. That Jesus Molina song. And from that experiment of learning something that was hard for me, I'm going to bring you 4 principles of learning odd meters. Buckle up and let's take the ride. And folks, there are going to be a number of exercises and beats and idioms in this lesson that you may want to transcribe. I'm here to tell you you don't have to do that. We've done it for you. You can get the free transcription by clicking the link below the player and telling us where to send it on the next page. That's it. On with the show. So I told you I was banging my head against the wall this month, trying to get better at 11. So from all that work, a single insight dropped out, and I want to share this with you guys. Tell me what you think of this. Meters aren't easy or hard. Cycles are. That means there's nothing inherent to 5, 7, 9, or even 17 that makes it any harder to play than 4, as long as you put in enough time. The reason certain meters are easier is because we're more familiar with them. But in Balkan societies that grew up with meters like 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13, they're very natural. Except for one thing that probably does make 4 a little easier: cycle length. That just means if I ask you to play phrases based on these 2 rhythms in 4, rhythm 1, in rhythm 2, you can probably do it almost immediately. But if I ask you to do that in 7, you can't. Because of the oddness, you can't just play divisible rhythms and still stay in a single bar. You need a 3. But here's the thing. Playing in 4 is hard too if you start incorporating odd rhythms. Say I give you rhythm 1 and rhythm 2, and rhythm 2 is 3 beats long. And I ask you to switch between those 2 over 4. Because it takes more bars to cycle back to the 1, that's what we call cycle length. Is that really more difficult than just cycling 4 and 3 and 7, 8? So that's what I mean when I say it's not the meter that makes playing over a time signature hard. It's phrases that cycle over the bar line. And that means playing in 5, 7, 9, or 11 isn't hard per se, it's just a matter of familiarity. Couple of examples. If you're an intermediate player, you might be more familiar with 5 because of one of the most famous jazz drum solos of all time, Joe Morello's over Dave Brubeck's tune Tape 5. If you're a pop music or Vinny fan, you might be familiar with Sting's 7 Days. Or its B-side cousin, St. Augustine in Hell. You might even be more comfortable with these odd meters than something like Dave Brubeck's Blue Rondo a la Turk. But Blue Rondo isn't 6. It's just a slow jazz waltz with syncopation. So hopefully I've gone some distance to demonstrate that familiarity is the main thing that makes a meter easier or harder. Case in point, I can play pretty effortlessly over Gilad Hexelman's This Just In, which is a 9, or my friend Jake Saslow's Lucky 13, which isn't 13. But it took me the better part of a week to be a tiny bit comfortable soloing over Jesus Molina's Night in Tunisia take, which is the current hotness. There's one other reason which we'll cover later, but the primary reason I think is I'm just more familiar with those other tunes. Okay, so say you believe me that it's just all reps. Is there not some way to make those reps easier? Yes, and we'll get into that now. Strategy 1. We remember melody better than numbers. Let's say I ask you to play a solo over 5/4, or even a beat. Do it just with the metronome counting to 5. I bet that's going to take more time than if I ask you to play a solo over 7 days. Likewise, if I ask you to play over 9, you'll probably have an easier time if you keep Gilad Hexelman's bass line from This Just In your head. So that's why strategy 1. Think of a melody or bass line. We've already covered a few of my favorites in 5 and 7. For 9, as we've covered, This Just In. For 11, one I like is this from a Robin Eubanks tune with Dave Holland. For 13, it's Jake Saslow's Lucky 13. If you want to practice playing in these meters, don't just count. Think of a melody or bass line. Trust me, our human intuitions will absorb that faster. Now, on to strategy 2. Strategy 2, start basic, then smear the beginnings and endings of phrases. Once you have your melody, start with a basic beat. I'll use 7 Days here. First, I'm just playing the chorus beat from Vinny. As I get more comfortable, I'm going to start smearing. That means instead of playing downbeats, I'll play pickups in some spots. Then maybe instead of landing on the 1 in every situation, I'll land on the 2, or the preceding beat. We're gently pulling on the meter, getting more familiar by throwing some challenges our way and keeping it in our heads. Once that's comfortable, strategy 3. Practice over the barline cycles. Remember when I said cycles over the bar line were just inherently hard? The good news is they're hard over 4 as well. Like, here I am playing groups of 5 over the bar line in 4. Not easy. It's not necessarily any harder in 5, except for the F word. No, the other F word. No, the other F word. Familiarity. So let's get familiar. I'll put the metronome on in 5 and start by playing a 2-beat cycle. This should return to the 1 every 2 bars. Next, I'll do a 3-beat cycle. This should cycle back to 5 every 3 bars. Finally, let's do dotted 8ths. Same as the 3, it will cycle every 3 bars since 1 dotted 8th equals 3/8. Want to make it harder? Get some part of your body to play the bar lines and another part to do the cycle. Here, I'll play a simple 5-beat between kick and snare and use the lead hand to play a couple of those cycles. The final level of this is just playing them with no reference point and still ending on the 1 if you had a hypothetical friend counting. Eventually you can start playing rhythmic idioms like those in this video over the top of those meters. As that gets closer to just improvising, so too does your familiarity with the meter grow. Another fun trick to try, the fractal properties of odd meters. Say what? Yes. In 5/4, I can play 2 bars of 5/8, and they'll of course fit in the bar. But they'll also divide the bar cleanly in half. Think about it in 3. 2 bars of 3/8 over 1 bar of 3/4. And now in 7. 2 bars of 7/8 over your 7/4. That dividing the bar in half is also useful for metric modulations. Beyond the scope of this video, but a pretty common one is from 5/4 to 4/4. By dividing the bar in half and just making the old 5/8 the new half note. Not necessarily stuff you'd apply immediately, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it in a video about odd meters. Okay, next principle, tempo. Remember our ubiquitous Jesus Molina song, the 11-beat elephant in the room? Part of what makes it so challenging is the tempo. So I take it slow. It's a lot easier to play it here than to play it here. And tempo is one of those things you can't really rush, no pun intended. Provided you're not trying to do too many things at once An increase in tempo is a byproduct of just doing the process over and over. What I mean is, don't beat yourself up if you can't go super fast right away. But Nate, I hear you saying, why spend 2 whole weeks banging your head against the wall with Night in Tunisia? It seems pretty basic to play, right? Like you could probably learn the basic beat in a few minutes. So what's the problem? Well, this. And this. Could you do that? She's playing almost free of constraints, just making evolving phrases and keeping the meter in the periphery of her awareness. As Yogev Gave discusses in our podcast interview.
Think of just driving in a street where you see the stoplights, but they're all green. You keep on driving. If you just don't look at the street, you feel like you're just going, but like there's an intersection. It passed. I saw it. I can wave at it. I can stop. I cannot stop. It's there, but I can also just go straight. I don't have to really stop and go and stop and go and stop and go.
To be really comfortable in an odd meter, that means feeling almost completely unconstrained in the phrases you can make, and having the ability to let a phrase evolve and meander without worrying about where it's going to land, and having the meter ingrained enough that it lands where it lands and you don't lose the count. Perhaps nobody in the modern era embodies this fluency quite like Tigran Hamasyan. And my friend Steve shows how it's done playing along with him, both making phrases over the bar line effortlessly, not constrained by the meter. Which ends up in a bit of an ironic place, no? If we're just gonna smear our phrases across the bar line either way, why not just play in 4? Well, for the listener, it's about the tension between the meter and the phrases. When we hear Tigran play this solo, he's not going completely outside. He's still making reference to the meter. When Roni Caspi goes off overnight in Tunisia, the band is maintaining the ostinato in 11. Their solo is more interesting when referenced against the ostinato. Same for Gilad in This Just In. Joe Martin is gamely holding down the ostinato, which allows Gilad to play inside and outside the meter and sounds cool to the audience. But the soloist still needs that utter familiarity with the meter.
And that's how you get the gig.
Well, have we learned anything? I suspect this will be another controversial one, though I'm not even sure why. I just have a spidey sense. Anyway, if you have a comment about this, please leave it politely down below. And just a reminder, you can get a transcription of everything I played in this lesson for free by clicking the link below the player and telling us where to send it on the next page. Dudes, it's been real. Always enjoyed these. See you again real soon in another lesson of the week.